This video today is going to go over the structure of poetry. In this video, we're really going to be focusing on stanza, rhyme, and line break. What do we mean by stanza? So a stanza is essentially just a group of lines in a poem. It's often called a verse. So if you think of it in terms of a song, let's say you're listening to a song and Drake is featured on that song. He may take a couple of verses or a couple of lines in the song to sing, and then it would go back to its original creator. So if you think of that, that's a stanza, right? It's just a group of lines in a poem. Because when you're writing poetry, it's not an essay. It doesn't have lines that go from one end to the other, right? You have just a group of small lines in a poem that are broken up into different stanzas. So I mean, some poetry, you may just have one stanza. You may have 10 stanzas. It all depends on how you want to structure your poem and what you're trying to talk about. So let's look at this poem, Today Is Your Luck by Bruce Lansky. Today on your birthday, consider your luck. You could have been born as a pig, cow, or duck. You could have been born crying oink, quack, or moo. You're lucky you didn't wind up in the zoo. So we see that this poem is broken up into two different stanzas. So that's essentially what you want to do whenever you are creating your own poetry. You do want to make sure you separate your ideas into different stanzas. There's no limit on how many lines are in a stanza. That is something that you as the creator get to make that choice. Rhyme. So we all know what rhyming is. A lot of songs we listen to rhyme, or just things that we say rhyme. So rhyme is a pattern of words that contain similar sounds. So in this poem, we said luck, and then it was duck. And then we had moo, and then we had it rhyme with zoo. So if you want to go that route and have the ending word in your stanza rhyme, that's totally cool. That is a stylistic choice that you get to make when structuring your poems. So you could have a rhyme of similar sounds in your poem. Let's also talk about line breaks. So a line break is where that line of poetry ends. So like I said, we're not writing poetry on a piece of notebook paper from one end to the other, and that's a sentence. The way that we structure poetry is that we want to wrap those sentences, right? We don't want sentences to take up the entire page. So it causes the reader to pause and will determine how the poem is read. So line breaks come at the end of each line of the poem. Okay, so today on your birthday, consider your luck. That's one sentence. You could have been born as a pig, cow, or duck. That is two sentences into 4 lines because the creator wants you to pause at the end. So today on your birthday, consider your luck. You could have been born as a pig, cow, or duck. So you take that breath and you take that pause as you are reading that line or that stanza. It's also a good time to talk about periods, commas. They have an effect on how you read the poem. Remember, when you come across those as you're reading something aloud or to yourself, you're supposed to take a moment and pause. It's a structure kind of poetry that you can follow. We want you to have stanzas. We want you to have different verses in your poem. You, as the creator, get to choose how many stanzas you would like in your poem. If you want to add a rhyming scheme to your poetry, that is up to you. If you want to add certain line breaks in there, that is up to you. That is a stylistic choice that you as the creator get to choose. But if you think about it, anything can be poetry. Any journal entry you write can be broken up into different stanzas. It could have line breaks to create a piece of poetry. Any song that you listen to, that is also poetry. You as the creator get to choose how you want to approach your poems. Here is a structure of poetry. You have your poem that you're creating in the center. So you get to decide what structure you want to use when creating your poem. I did not touch on forms. So you can go ahead and ignore that. But then let's talk about these elements. So what are things that need to be included in your poetry? You want to make sure you add in figurative language, similes, metaphors, personification, onomatopoeia. You want to make sure you add in literary devices, imagery, symbolism. All of these things help create a tone of your piece of poetry, and they affect the author's message, and it helps create the author's message of your poem. So make sure you write about something that's meaningful to you or something that you have a lot to say about, because that will come across in your poetry when you are creating it.